Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Pathfinder, watching the stars through the main view screen. His crew had been exploring the outer edges of the solar system for 3 months now. They were looking for new planets and resources that Earth could use. The mission was supposed to be routine and boring. Jake was a career military officer who had spent 15 years in space. He had brown hair that was starting to turn gray at the edges and tired eyes that had seen too much. His uniform was neat and pressed, but his face showed the wear of a man who had been in space too long. He commanded a crew of 42 people aboard the Pathfinder, and they trusted him with their lives. The ship's computer started beeping. Lieutenant Amy Brooks, the communications officer, looked up from her station. She was young and eager, with short blonde hair and bright blue eyes. This was her first deep space mission, and she was excited to be part of the exploration team. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," Amy said. She pressed buttons on her console, trying to get a clearer signal. "There's a structure in the asteroid field ahead. It's not natural." Jake walked over to her station. The screen showed a fuzzy image of something big floating between the rocks. It looked like a building, but buildings did not float in space. At least, human buildings did not float in space. "Can you get a clearer picture?" Jake asked. Amy worked at her controls for several minutes. The image slowly became sharper. What they saw made the entire bridge crew go quiet. It was definitely artificial, but it was not human. The structure was smooth and curved, with strange symbols carved into its surface. It glowed with a soft blue light. "Sir, I've never seen anything like this," said Lieutenant Bob Turner, the ship's science officer. Bob was a tall, thin man with glasses and a nervous habit of adjusting them when he was thinking. "The design is completely alien, and the energy readings are off the charts." Jake felt his heart start beating faster. First contact with an alien civilization was something every space explorer dreamed about, but it was also something every military officer feared. Unknown aliens could mean amazing discoveries, or they could mean terrible danger. "Take us closer, but keep our distance," Jake ordered. "And power up the defensive systems, just in case." The Pathfinder moved slowly toward the alien structure. As they got closer, they could see it was much bigger than they had first thought. The building was at least a mile long and half a mile wide. It had several levels and what looked like docking bays. "Captain, I'm detecting movement," Amy reported. "Something is coming out of the structure." A ship emerged from one of the docking bays. It was unlike anything humans had ever built. The alien vessel was sleek and silver, with flowing curves that reminded Jake of a sea creature. It moved through space with grace and purpose, heading straight for the Pathfinder. "Sir, they're trying to communicate," Amy said, her voice shaking with excitement. "I'm getting signals on multiple frequencies." Jake made a decision that would change everything. "Open a channel. Let's see what they want to say." The main screen flickered, then showed the interior of the alien ship. The bridge was filled with strange creatures that stood nearly 8 feet tall. They had pale blue skin that looked like it was made of crystal, and their eyes were large and dark. They wore robes that seemed to shimmer with their own light. One of the aliens stepped forward. When it spoke, the ship's computer translated its words into English. "Greetings, young ones," the alien said. Its voice was deep and musical. "I am Dr. Veltar of the Zephyrian Council. We have been watching your species for many years. Do not be afraid. We come in peace." Jake tried to keep his expression neutral, but inside he was amazed. These creatures had been watching Earth for years without humans knowing it. That meant they had technology far beyond anything humans possessed. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship Pathfinder," Jake replied. "We are honored to meet you." Dr. Veltar seemed pleased. "Your species has made impressive progress. We have observed your development from primitive hunters to space travelers. It is remarkable how quickly you have advanced." Something in the alien's tone bothered Jake. The way Dr. Veltar spoke reminded him of how adults talk to children. It was friendly, but there was something condescending about it. "How long have you been watching us?" Jake asked. "For approximately 3 of your centuries," Dr. Veltar replied. We have research stations throughout your solar system. Your species has been most interesting to study. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. 300 years of observation, without contact. The aliens had been watching humans like scientists watching animals in a zoo. Why are you revealing yourselves now? Jake asked. Dr. Veltar's expression became more serious. Because your species has reached a critical point in its development. You have begun to spread beyond your home world. It is time for you to learn about the greater galaxy and your place in it. The alien gestured, and the screen showed images of vast space cities and fleets of ships. We are the Zephyrian Empire. We span 12 star systems and guide dozens of younger species. We have brought peace and prosperity to countless worlds. Jake watched the images, but something felt wrong. The other species in the pictures looked happy, but there was something in their eyes that reminded him of domesticated animals. They looked content, but not free. We would like to invite representatives from your world to visit our home planet, Dr. Veltar continued. There you can learn about the benefits of joining the galactic community. We offer protection, advanced technology, and guidance as you take your first steps among the stars. The word protection made Jake's military instincts kick in. Protection. From what? And why did these aliens assume humans needed their guidance? That is a generous offer, Jake said carefully. I will need to report this to my superiors on Earth. Of course, Dr. Veltar replied. We understand that such decisions take time. Young species often need time to understand what is best for them. There it was again. The condescending tone that suggested humans were children who needed adult supervision. Before we end this conversation, Jake said, I'm curious about something. In your observations of humanity, what did you learn about our nature? Dr. Veltar seemed happy to answer. Your species is fascinating. You are social creatures who work together well. You have strong family bonds and care for your young. You have developed art, music, and literature. However, you also have a tendency toward violence and conflict. This is common among younger species. With proper guidance, these aggressive impulses can be channeled into more productive activities. Jake nodded, but inside he was thinking furiously. The aliens had been watching humans for 3 centuries, but they had completely misunderstood what they were seeing. They saw human wars as primitive violence, not as the sophisticated military operations they actually were. They saw human territorial disputes as animal behavior, not as the complex geopolitical strategies they represented. Thank you for your time, Dr. Veltar, Jake said. This has been very educational. The pleasure is ours, Captain Morrison. We look forward to welcoming humanity into the galactic community. The transmission ended and the alien ship returned to its station. Jake stood on the bridge, staring at the screen. His crew was excited about the first contact, but Jake felt a growing sense of unease. Captain, this is amazing, Amy said. We've made contact with an advanced alien civilization. Think of what we can learn from them. Jake turned to look at his young communications officer. Amy, I want you to send a priority message to Earth Command. Tell them we've made contact with aliens who claim to have been watching us for 300 years. Tell them these aliens want to meet with Earth's leaders. Yes, sir? Should I mention their offer of protection and guidance? Jake thought about that for a moment. Yes, but also mention that they seem to view humans as a primitive species that needs their supervision. I have a feeling this first contact is going to be more complicated than it appears. As the Pathfinder headed back toward Earth, Jake could not shake the feeling that humanity was about to face its greatest challenge. The aliens clearly had superior technology, but they had also clearly underestimated what humans were capable of. That combination could lead to disaster for both species. The question was, which species had made the bigger mistake in judgment? Admiral Lisa Carter sat in the emergency meeting room deep inside the Pentagon. The walls were covered with screens showing star maps and tactical displays. Around the large table sat the most powerful military leaders on Earth. Everyone looked worried. Lisa was a tough woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had climbed her way up through the ranks by being smarter and more determined than anyone else. Now she was in charge of Earth's entire space defense network, and she had never faced a challenge like this. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Lisa said, looking at the report in front of her. "These aliens have been watching us for 300 years without us knowing it. They have technology far beyond ours, and now they want to meet with our leaders to discuss our future." Colonel Ryan Walsh nodded from across the table. He was a big man with broad shoulders and a thick mustache. Ryan had spent his career planning for military threats, but he had always assumed those threats would come from other humans. "That's correct, Admiral. Captain Morrison's report makes it clear that these Zephyrians see us as a primitive species that needs their guidance. They claim to have research stations throughout our solar system." General Linda Brown, the head of Earth's ground forces, leaned forward. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for asking tough questions. "What bothers me most is how they talk about us. They sound like parents talking about children who don't know what's good for them." Dr. Patricia Kim, the government's top expert on alien psychology, had been studying the translated conversations. She was a quiet woman with long black hair and wire-rimmed glasses. "Based on their language patterns, I believe the Zephyrians genuinely think they're being helpful, but their definition of help might not match ours." Admiral Carter stood up and walked to the main display screen. It showed the solar system with red dots marking the locations where the aliens claimed to have observation posts. "The question is, what do we do now? They've requested a formal meeting with Earth's leaders. If we refuse, we might make them angry. If we agree, we might be walking into a trap." Colonel Walsh pulled up another screen showing Earth's military assets. "Admiral, our space-based defenses are strong, but they were designed to fight other humans. We have no idea what alien weapons can do." "Actually, we might have more advantages than we think," said Dr. Helen Ross, Earth's leading expert on alien technology. Helen was a brilliant scientist who had spent her career studying theoretical alien contact scenarios. "I've been analyzing the data from Captain Morrison's encounter. The Zephyrians' technology is impressive, but it seems designed for specific purposes." She pointed to images of the alien ship on the screen. "Look at their vessel. It's beautiful and advanced, but it's not built for combat. The hull is thin to save weight. The energy systems are optimized for research, not warfare. These aliens have been peaceful for so long that they've forgotten how to fight." Admiral Carter felt a spark of hope. "What are you saying, Doctor?" "I'm saying that the Zephyrians might be making the same mistake about us that we're making about them. They see our wars as primitive violence, but they don't understand that war has made us incredibly good at building weapons and military tactics." General Brown smiled grimly. "So while they've been studying us like animals in a zoo, we've been perfecting the art of killing each other with increasingly sophisticated methods." Meanwhile, far across the galaxy on the crystal world of Kethmer, the Zephyrian Council was having their own meeting. The council chamber was a vast dome made of living crystal that glowed with soft rainbow light. 12 elderly Zephyrians sat in a circle, their robes flowing around them like liquid starlight. Elder Zixthal was the oldest and most respected member of the council. He had lived for over 2,000 years and had overseen the peaceful integration of 6 primitive species into the Zephyrian Empire. His crystal skin was pure white with age, and his eyes held the wisdom of centuries. "The humans have been contacted," Elder Zixthal announced in his deep, musical voice. "Dr. Veltar reports that they seem receptive to our guidance, though they will need time to convince their leaders." Elder Kefalin, a younger council member with pale blue skin, looked concerned. "Are we certain they are ready for integration?" "Dr. Veltar's report suggests they are still quite violent." Elder Zixthal waved a crystal hand dismissively. "All young species go through a violent phase. The Corvani were constantly at war when we found them. The Drelter had destroyed half their planet with weapons. Now both species live in peace under our protection." Dr. Veltar stood in the center of the circle, presenting his final report on humanity. He had prepared holographic displays showing human cities, armies, and technology. To Zephyrian eyes, it all looked charmingly primitive. The humans have achieved basic space travel and have established colonies on several worlds in their system, Dr. Veltar explained. Their technology is approximately 3,000 years behind ours. They still use chemical rockets and nuclear power. Their weapons are crude but effective against their own kind. He gestured, and the hologram showed images of human soldiers. Their military forces are divided into many small groups that fight over territory and resources. This is typical behavior for species that have not yet learned to work together on a planetary scale. Elder Zixthel studied the images. They look strong and healthy, good genetic stock. With proper guidance, they could become valuable members of the Empire. What about their government? Asked Elder Mordek, who specialized in political integration. Do they have a single leader we can negotiate with? Dr. Veltar shook his head. They are fragmented into hundreds of competing groups. This will actually make integration easier. We can offer our protection to the most reasonable leaders and use them to convince the others. Elder Zixthel nodded approvingly. The standard protocol, then. We demonstrate our superior technology, offer protection and guidance, and gradually assume administrative control of their worlds. How long do you estimate the process will take? Based on our experience with similar species, I would estimate 50 to 100 years for complete integration, Dr. Veltar replied. The humans seem more stubborn than most, but they are also more intelligent. Once they understand the benefits of joining the Empire, they will accept our guidance. Elder Kethlin still looked worried. What if they refuse our offer? Elder Zixthel's expression became stern. That would be unfortunate. Young species rarely understand what is best for them. Sometimes guidance must be more direct. The council members all nodded in agreement. They had faced this situation before with other species. Most civilizations eventually saw the wisdom of accepting Zephyrian protection. Those that did not usually change their minds after a demonstration of Zephyrian military power. Back on Earth, Captain Morrison was meeting with his crew in the Pathfinder's briefing room. The ship had returned to Earth orbit, and everyone was excited about the historic first contact. But Jake could not shake his feeling that something was wrong. Captain, the aliens seemed friendly enough, said Lieutenant Amy Brooks. They're offering to share their technology and protect us from dangers in space. Isn't that a good thing? Jake looked around the table at his crew. These were good people who trusted him, and he did not want to worry them unnecessarily. But his military instincts were screaming warnings. Amy, I've been thinking about what Dr. Veltar said. He mentioned that they've been watching us for 3 centuries. In all that time, they never made contact. Why now? Lieutenant Bob Turner adjusted his glasses nervously. Maybe they were waiting for us to develop space travel? Maybe, Jake said. But think about it. They've been watching us through some of the most important periods in human history. They saw the Industrial Revolution, both world wars, the development of nuclear weapons, the space race. They watched us go from horses to spaceships in less than 200 years. That's pretty impressive when you think about it, Amy said. Jake nodded. Exactly. But they still talk about us like we're children playing with toys. They don't seem to understand that our primitive violence has driven us to develop incredibly sophisticated military technology. Bob looked thoughtful. You think they're underestimating us? I think they're making a very dangerous assumption, Jake replied. They assume that because their technology is more advanced, they automatically have the upper hand. But technology isn't everything. Sometimes the species that has had to fight for survival has advantages that the peaceful species doesn't expect. Amy frowned. What kind of advantages? Jake stood up and walked to the window that showed Earth below. The planet looked peaceful from space, but he knew better. Down there, humans were building weapons, training soldiers, and preparing for conflicts. That might never come. It was what humans did. The advantage of never feeling completely safe, Jake said quietly. Humans have never had a period in our history where we didn't have to worry about enemies. That's made us very good at preparing for war, even when we hope for peace. The meeting ended, but Jake's words stayed with his crew. As the Pathfinder docked at Earth's primary space station, everyone was wondering the same thing. Were the Zephyrians really the benevolent protectors they claimed to be? Or were they predators who had mistaken humans for easy prey? 3 months after the first contact, a massive Zephyrian ship appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system. The vessel was beautiful and impressive, shaped like a glowing crystal flower with petals that seemed to shift and change color. It was called the Harmony's Light, and it carried the most important diplomatic mission in Zephyrian history. Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the command center of Earth's primary space station, watching the alien ship through the main display. The vessel was 10 times larger than any human ship, and its energy readings were off the charts, but Lisa was not intimidated. She had spent the last 3 months preparing for this moment. "Admiral, the Zephyrians are requesting permission to escort our diplomatic team to a neutral meeting location," reported Commander Steve Martinez, the station's communications officer. Steve was a calm, professional man who had handled many tense situations, but nothing quite like this, Lisa nodded. "Tell them we accept their invitation. Captain Morrison and his team are ready to depart." The meeting was arranged to take place on Kepler Station, an abandoned mining facility in the Proxima Centauri system. The location was chosen because it was far from both Earth and Zephyrian space, making it truly neutral ground. What the Zephyrians did not know was that humans had been secretly upgrading the old station for months, installing hidden sensors and defensive systems. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, humanity's newest and most advanced warship. The ship looked smaller and cruder than the Zephyrian vessel, but appearances could be deceiving. Every system on the Defiant was designed for one purpose: winning battles against superior technology. With Jake were his carefully chosen team members. Major Scott Davis was a combat veteran who had fought in 3 different wars. He was a stocky man with scarred hands and alert eyes that missed nothing. Dr. Patricia Kim was the government's expert on alien psychology, brought along to help understand Zephyrian motivations. Lieutenant Amy Brooks had been promoted and assigned to the diplomatic team because of her experience with alien communications. "Captain, we're approaching Kepler Station," reported Lieutenant Carol White, the ship's navigator. Carol was young, but skilled, with red hair and a fierce determination to prove herself worthy of this historic mission. Jake looked at the ancient mining station growing larger on the screen. It looked abandoned and harmless, but he knew that dozens of hidden weapons were tracking every ship that approached. If this meeting went wrong, the station could defend itself. The Harmony's Light was already docked at the station when the Defiant arrived. Jake could see Zephyrian crew members moving through the transparent sections of their ship. They moved with the grace of beings who had never known war, never felt the need to watch their backs or prepare for danger. "Remember," Jake told his team as they prepared to board the station, "we're here to listen and learn, but stay alert. Something about this whole situation feels wrong." The meeting took place in the station's main conference room, a large chamber with windows that looked out at the stars. The room had been cleaned and prepared for the historic occasion, with comfortable chairs arranged around a circular table. Elder Zixthol led the Zephyrian delegation. He was ancient even by Zephyrian standards, his crystal skin pure white with age. His robes flowed around him like liquid light, and his presence filled the room with an aura of wisdom and power. With him were Dr. Veltar and 3 other Zephyrian officials. "Welcome, honored humans," Elder Zixthol said as Jake's team entered the room. His voice was deep and musical, translated by devices that both sides wore. "We are pleased to finally meet with representatives of your species in person." Jake studied the aliens carefully. They were impressive beings, tall and graceful, with an air of absolute confidence. But there was something in their manner that reminded him of adults talking to children at a school assembly. "We are honored by your invitation," Jake replied diplomatically. "Earth's leaders are eager to learn more about your civilization and your intentions toward humanity." Elder Zixthol gestured to the table, and everyone sat down. The Zephyrians had brought gifts, devices that could heal diseases, machines that could create food from basic elements, and entertainment systems that could create realistic holographic experiences. These are tokens of our goodwill, Elder Zixthel explained. They represent the kind of technology we can share with your species once you join the galactic community. Dr. Patricia Kim leaned forward with interest. These devices are remarkable. May I ask what you would expect in return for sharing such advanced technology? Dr. Veltar spoke up. We ask very little. Simply that your species accept our guidance as you learn to take your place among the stars. We have experience with many younger civilizations, and we know how to help them avoid the mistakes that could lead to their destruction. Major Scott. Davis had been quiet during the exchange, but now he spoke. What kind of mistakes are you referring to? Elder Zixthel's expression became serious. War, primarily. Young species often destroy themselves through violence before they can reach their full potential. We have seen it happen many times. This is why we offer our protection. Protection from what? Jake asked. From yourselves, mainly, Dr. Veltar replied. Your species has a history of conflict. Your wars have become increasingly destructive as your technology has advanced. Without proper guidance, you could destroy your own civilization. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The aliens were not just offering to protect humanity from external threats. They were offering to protect humanity from itself. That sounded less like an alliance and more like a takeover. I'm curious about your other client species, Dr. Kim. Saad carefully. Could you tell us about your experiences with them? Elder Zixthel seemed happy to discuss his successes. With a gesture, he activated a holographic display that showed images of various alien worlds. We have guided 6 species to peaceful prosperity. The Corvani were once a warlike people, but under our guidance they have learned to channel their energies into art and philosophy. The Drelter were destroying their planet with pollution, but we helped them develop clean technology. The images showed beautiful alien cities and happy-looking beings going about their daily lives. But Jake noticed something troubling. In every image, there were Zephyrian supervisors watching over the other species. The client races looked content, but they also looked controlled. These species all seem very peaceful, Jake observed. Do they still maintain their own military forces? Dr. Veltar looked confused by the question. Military forces? Why would they need military forces? We provide all the protection they require. What about their governments? Major Davis asked. Do they still make their own decisions about their planets? Elder Zixthel's expression became slightly impatient. Young species often make poor decisions. We provide guidance to help them. Choose wisely. Over time, they learn to accept our counsel in all matters. Jake exchanged glances with his team members. The picture was becoming clearer. The Zephyrians did not want allies. They wanted pets. What would happen if humanity decided that we preferred to remain independent? Jake asked directly. The room fell silent. Elder Zixthel's crystal features hardened slightly. That would be most unfortunate. Young species rarely understand what is best for them. Your history of violence and conflict shows that your species cannot be trusted to make wise decisions about your own future. And if we insisted on independence anyway? Jake pressed. Dr. Veltar leaned forward. Captain Morrison, surely you understand that some decisions are too important to be left to inexperienced species. The safety of the galaxy must be considered. Elder. Zixthel's voice took on a harder edge. We have never encountered a species that was not eventually grateful for our guidance. Some require more convincing than others, but they all come to understand the benefits of our protection. Major Davis spoke quietly. What kind of convincing? Elder Zixthel's eyes glowed brighter. Sometimes young species need to see the consequences of their poor choices. A demonstration of the dangers they face without our protection can be very educational. Jake felt his blood turn cold. The alien was talking about using force to make humanity comply. They were threatening Earth with the same casual certainty that adults might use to threaten to take away a child's toys. I think we understand your position, Jake said carefully. We will need to discuss this with our leaders on Earth. Of course, Elder Zixtel replied, his friendly manner returning. Take all the time you need. We are patient. But remember, the galaxy is a dangerous place for unprotected species. The sooner you accept our guidance, the safer your people will be. The meeting ended with polite farewells and promises to continue discussions. But as the human team returned to their ship, everyone knew that the real negotiations were over. The Zephyrians had made their position clear: submit to their control or face the consequences. Captain, Amy said as they boarded the Defiant, do you think they're really trying to help us? Jake looked back at the alien ship docked at the station. I think they believe they're helping us. But their idea of help and our idea of freedom are two very different things. As the Defiant departed Kepler Station, Jake began composing his report to Earth Command. The message would be simple: the Zephyrians were not offering. Captain Jake Morrison's report reached Earth Command within hours of his return from Kepler Station. The message was marked with the highest priority classification, and it sent shockwaves through the entire military leadership. Admiral Lisa Carter called an emergency meeting of the Global Defense Council, bringing together representatives from every major nation on Earth. The war room was filled with tension as Jake delivered his report in person. The large screen showed images from the diplomatic meeting, and every face in the room grew more serious as the implications became clear. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, said General Chun Wei, the representative from the Asian Alliance. He was a small, quiet man who spoke rarely but always made his words count. These aliens are not offering us partnership. They are demanding that we surrender our independence and accept their control over human civilization. Jake nodded grimly. That's exactly right, General. They believe they are being generous by offering to guide us, but their idea of guidance means taking away our right to make our own decisions. Admiral Carter stood up and walked to the display showing Earth's defense network. The question now is whether we can defend ourselves against their superior technology. Colonel Walsh, what's our current military status? Colonel Ryan Walsh pulled up a series of tactical displays. Admiral, we've been preparing for this possibility ever since the first contact. Our analysis suggests that we may have more advantages than the Zephyrians realize. Dr. Helen Ross, the alien technology expert, stepped forward. I've been studying the data from Captain Morrison's encounters with the Zephyrians. Their technology is impressive, but it's designed for peaceful purposes. Their ships are built for exploration and transport, not for combat. She pointed to images of the Harmony's light. Look at the construction. Their hull is thin and lightweight to maximize speed and fuel efficiency. Their energy systems are optimized for research equipment and life support. They have shields, but they're designed to deflect space debris, not military weapons. General Brown leaned forward with interest. Are you saying their ships are vulnerable? I'm saying their ships are built by a species that hasn't fought a real war in thousands of years, Dr. Ross replied. They've forgotten that sometimes technology isn't enough. Sometimes you need to build things specifically to destroy other things. Admiral Carter felt a spark of hope. What about our own capabilities? How do we compare? Colonel Walsh smiled grimly. Admiral, the Zephyrians have been watching us for 3 centuries, but they've completely misunderstood what they were seeing. They think our wars are primitive conflicts, but they don't realize that war has made us incredibly good at military technology. He activated another display showing human military assets throughout the solar system. Every human colony has defensive systems. Every trade route has hidden weapon platforms. Even our civilian ships can be converted to military use within hours. The Mars colonial wars that happened 20 years ago? Colonel Walsh continued. The Zephyrians probably saw that as humans fighting over territory, but it was actually a training exercise. We were testing our ability to fight battles in space and on different planets. General Chun Wei looked surprised. The Mars conflicts were training exercises? Not entirely, Admiral Carter admitted. There were real political tensions. But our military leaders used those conflicts to test new weapons and tactics. We learned valuable lessons about space combat that we've been applying ever since. Dr. Ross pulled up more data. The asteroid mining operations that the Zephyrians observed, half of those facilities are actually weapons manufacturing plants, the peaceful trade routes between our colonies. They're designed to move military supplies quickly and efficiently. Jake felt a growing sense of pride in his species. So while the Zephyrians were studying us like animals in a zoo, we were actually preparing for exactly this kind of situation. Without even knowing it, Admiral Carter agreed. Human paranoia and our tendency to prepare for the worst-case scenario may have saved our civilization. Meanwhile, on the Zephyrian homeworld of Kethmer, Dr. Veltar was presenting his final report to the Council of Elders. The crystal chamber was filled with the soft light of the planet's twin suns, and the elderly Zephyrians listened carefully to his assessment of the human situation. "The humans have rejected our generous offer," Dr. Veltar reported. "Captain." Morrison was polite but firm in his refusal to accept our guidance. "They insist on maintaining their independence, even after we explain the dangers of their current path." Elder Zixthal's crystal features showed disappointment. "This is unfortunate but not unexpected. Young species often need time to understand what is best for them." "What is your recommendation?" asked Elder Kethelin. Dr. Veltar activated a holographic display showing the human solar system. "I recommend the standard intervention protocol. We deploy a battle fleet to their home system and demonstrate our superior technology. Once they see that resistance is futile, they will accept our guidance." Elder Mordek, the military specialist, studied the display. "How much force do you estimate will be required?" "Minimal," Dr. Veltar replied confidently. "The humans have approximately 50 armed vessels scattered throughout their system. Their technology is primitive compared to ours. A single battle group should be sufficient to convince them to surrender." Elder Zixthal nodded approvingly. "The Crimson Fleet has been used for this purpose before. 12 ships should be more than adequate to handle any resistance the humans might offer." "Are you certain about their capabilities?" Elder Kethelin asked. "The humans seemed unusually confident during the negotiations." Dr. Veltar waved dismissively. "Young species often display false bravado when faced with superior civilizations. The humans have never faced an enemy with technology beyond their own level. Once they see our ships, their confidence will evaporate." Elder Morduk looked thoughtful. "What about their military history?" "You mentioned they are prone to violence." "Their conflicts are crude affairs," Dr. Veltar explained. "They use chemical explosives and primitive energy weapons. Their largest battles involve a few thousand individuals. They have no experience with space combat on a large scale." Elder Zixthal made his decision. "Very well, send word to Admiral Kethmer. The Crimson Fleet will depart for the human system immediately. Once they arrive, they will demand the surrender of all human military forces. If the humans comply, we will begin the integration process. If they resist, we will demonstrate why resistance is futile." Back on Earth, the final preparations were underway. Admiral Carter had activated every defense protocol in the human military handbook. What looked like a peaceful solar system was actually a carefully prepared battlefield. The asteroid belt contained hundreds of hidden weapon platforms, disguised as mining equipment. The space stations around Earth and Mars were actually military fortresses with enough firepower to destroy fleets. Even the civilian colonies had been quietly evacuated. Their populations moved to underground bunkers. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, now flagship of the 1st Defense Fleet. His ship had been joined by 23 other vessels, all of them designed specifically for combat. Unlike the beautiful, graceful Zephyrian ships, human warships were ugly and functional. They were built to take damage and keep fighting. "Captain, long-range sensors are detecting incoming ships," reported Lieutenant Amy Brooks. 12 vessels, matching Zephyrian energy signatures. Jake felt his heart rate increase. "How long until they reach Earth?" "Approximately 6 hours at their current speed," Amy replied. Jake opened a communication channel to Admiral Carter. "Admiral, the Zephyrians are coming? 12 ships, just like our intelligence predicted." Admiral Carter's voice was calm and steady. "Understood, Captain. All defense fleets are in position. Remember, we only get one chance to surprise them. Make it count." Jake looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were humans who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Their species had been preparing for war for thousands of years, even when they did not know who the enemy would be. "Captain," said Major Scott Davis, who had been assigned to the Defiant as military advisor, "do you think we can win?" Jake thought about the question carefully. The Zephyrians had superior technology and greater numbers, but they had also made a critical error in judgment. They had assumed that humanity would be easy to defeat because humans seemed primitive and violent. "Major, I think the Zephyrians are about to learn something important about human nature," Jake replied. "We may be primitive and violent, but we're also incredibly good at being primitive and violent." The final hours before battle ticked away. Both sides were confident in their abilities, but only one side truly understood what they were facing. The Zephyrians saw humans as unruly children who needed discipline. Humans saw the Zephyrians as an existential threat that had to be destroyed. War was coming to the solar system, and it would determine the future of both species. The Crimson Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system like 12 gleaming jewels against the black of space. Each Zephyrian vessel was a masterpiece of engineering, their crystal hulls shimmering with rainbow light. They moved in perfect formation, broadcasting messages of surrender to every human settlement. Admiral Kethmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dawn. He was a tall, elegant Zephyrian with silver-blue skin and robes that flowed like liquid metal. In his 2,000 years of life, he had overseen the peaceful integration of 4 different species. This would be his 5th, and he expected it to be just as routine as the others. "Admiral, we are receiving a response from the human vessels," reported his communications officer. Admiral Kethmore nodded calmly. "Put it on the main screen." The display showed the bridge of a human ship. A man in a military uniform stood at the center, his expression serious but not afraid. Admiral Kethmore recognized him from the intelligence reports. "Captain Jake Morrison, leader of the human diplomatic team." "This is Captain Morrison of the United Earth ship Defiant," Jake said clearly. "You have entered human space without permission. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Admiral Kethmore almost laughed. The human ship was less than a quarter the size of his flagship, and there were only 12 human vessels facing his entire fleet. The audacity was almost charming. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Kethmore replied in his musical voice. "I am Admiral Kethmore of the Zephyrian Crimson Fleet. You are greatly outnumbered and outgunned. I order you to stand down and prepare for boarding. Your resistance will only lead to unnecessary casualties." Jake's expression did not change. "Admiral, you have been warned. This is your last chance to leave peacefully." Dr. Veltar, who was observing from the flagship science station, shook his head in amazement. "The humans still do not understand their situation. Their primitive minds cannot comprehend the technological gap between our species." Admiral Kethmore cut the communication and turned to his weapons officer. "Target the human vessels. Disable their engines and weapon systems. Try not to destroy them completely. We will need some survivors to convince the others to surrender." The first shots of the war were fired at exactly 1432. Earth Standard Time. The Zephyrian fleet opened fire with their energy weapons, expecting to quickly disable the human ships. Their weapons were designed to overload enemy systems without causing lethal damage. A civilized approach to warfare. The energy beams struck the human vessels and simply bounced off their armor. The Zephyrians stared in shock as their weapons had no effect whatsoever. "What is happening?" Admiral Kethmore demanded. His science officer frantically checked his instruments. "Admiral, the human ships have some kind of energy shielding we did not detect. Our weapons are being deflected." On the bridge of the Defiant, Jake smiled grimly. Adaptive armor working perfectly. Their weapons are designed to disable, not destroy. They're not even trying to kill us. Major Scott Davis, standing beside him, shook his head. 300 years of watching us, and they still don't understand what we are. All ships, Jake announced over the fleet communication channel, weapons free. Show them what humans do to threats. The human fleet opened fire with everything they had. But instead of the energy weapons the Zephyrians expected, the human ships launched solid metal projectiles at incredible speeds. The kinetic rounds, accelerated by magnetic fields to nearly the speed of light, struck the Zephyrian vessels like hammers hitting glass. The first Zephyrian ship exploded in a shower of crystal fragments. The beautiful hull, designed for efficiency and elegance, shattered under the impact of weapons designed by a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of destruction. Impossible. Dr. Veltar gasped as he watched 3 more ships die in the first 30 seconds of combat. Their weapons are primitive. How can they penetrate our hulls? Admiral Kethmer realized with growing horror that everything they knew about humans was wrong. These were not the peaceful, primitive creatures from the reports. These were predators, and they had been preparing for this moment for generations. Evasive maneuvers. Admiral Kethmer ordered, "Return fire with full power." But the human ships were already moving, darting between the larger Zephyrian vessels like wolves attacking a herd of cattle. The Zephyrian fleet, designed for intimidation and transport, could not match the speed and agility of ships built specifically for combat. Captain Morrison's voice echoed across the battlefield. "All units, execute Formation Delta. Take them." Apart, more human ships appeared from hiding places throughout the solar system. They had been concealed behind asteroids, inside the shadows of planets, and even disguised as space debris. The Zephyrians found themselves surrounded by over 100 human vessels, all armed with weapons they had never imagined. Admiral Kethmer watched in disbelief as his fleet was systematically destroyed. The humans fought with a coordination and efficiency that spoke of centuries of military experience. Every move was calculated, every shot precisely aimed. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving surrender terms from the human fleet." Surrender terms? Admiral Kethmer could not believe what he was hearing. "They are offering us terms?" Jake Morrison's face appeared on the screen again. This time, his expression was cold and hard. "Admiral Kethmer, you have lost 8 ships in the last 10 minutes. Your remaining vessels are surrounded and outgunned. I am prepared to accept your surrender." Admiral Kethmer looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were scientists and explorers, not warriors. They had never faced an enemy like this. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Kethmer said slowly, "we came here to offer your species protection and guidance." "We meant no harm." Jake's expression softened slightly. "Admiral, I believe you meant no harm. But your idea of protection and our idea of freedom are 2 different things. You assumed we would be grateful for your guidance. We see it as conquest." Dr. Veltar stepped forward, his voice shaking with shock. "Captain, we studied your species for 3 centuries. We thought we understood you. How did we get everything so wrong?" Jake was quiet for a moment before answering. "Doctor, you saw what you expected to see. You saw primitive creatures fighting over territory. You never understood that our fighting made us stronger, not weaker. You never realized that our wars were teaching us how to survive against exactly the kind of threat you represent." On the bridge of the Defiant, Lieutenant Amy Brooks looked at the tactical display. "Captain, the remaining Zephyrian ships are powering down their weapons." Jake nodded. "Admiral Kethmer, do you surrender your fleet?" Admiral Kethmer looked at the wreckage of his ships floating in space. His magnificent fleet, the pride of the Zephyrian Empire, had been destroyed by a species he had considered primitive children. "I surrender," he said quietly. Jake opened a channel to all the human ships. "All units, cease fire. The battle is over." The silence that followed was deafening. In less than 20 minutes, the most powerful fleet in the Zephyrian Empire had been defeated by a species they had dismissed as harmless primitives. Admiral Lisa Carter's voice came over the communication. System from Earth Command. Captain Morrison, what are your casualties? Jake looked at his status reports. Admiral, we lost 2 ships and sustained minor damage to 6 others. Total casualties, 37 wounded, 12 dead. The numbers were staggering. The Zephyrians had lost 2/3 of their fleet, while the humans had barely been scratched. Dr. Valtar was staring at his instruments in disbelief. Captain Morrison, may I ask you something? Jake nodded. Go ahead, Doctor. We observed your species for 3 centuries. We saw your wars, your conflicts, your violence. We thought we understood what you were. What did we miss? Jake thought carefully before answering. Doctor, you saw humans fighting each other and assumed we were primitive and violent. You never understood that our fighting was practice. Every war, every conflict, every battle was teaching us how to protect ourselves against threats like you. He paused, looking at the defeated alien fleet. You spent 3,000 years building an empire by conquering species that had never learned to fight. We spent 3,000 years learning to fight each other. When you finally met us, you were predators who had forgotten how to hunt, facing prey that had never stopped being dangerous. Dr. Veltar's final transmission to the Zephyrian. Homeworld was brief and devastating. We were wrong about everything. The humans are not primitive creatures needing our guidance. They are apex predators who have been preparing for this moment. Their entire evolutionary history. We came here thinking we were shepherds meeting sheep. Instead, we were sheep meeting wolves. The news of the Crimson Fleet's defeat spread throughout the Zephyrian Empire like wildfire. Within months, species that had been under Zephyrian control for centuries began declaring independence. The empire that had seemed so powerful and eternal crumbled as the truth spread. The species that had ruled the galaxy through intimidation had finally met a species that refused to be intimidated. On Earth, Captain Morrison stood in his quarters. Looking out at the stars, the solar system was safe, but he knew this was just the beginning. Humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible.